Church here, and welcome to the Game Grinder, and today we're doing an unboxing video, and it's been a little while since I did one of these. I think the last one was the God of War Collector's Edition unboxing, so check that out if you want. But today we're talking about the Dragon Quest XI Edition of Lost Time. So before we get to checking this out, I just wanted to talk a little bit about my history with the Dragon Quest series, which is actually pretty minimal. There's been quite a few releases up to this point, with this one of course being 11. There's also the handheld series, which I believe are slightly different, but the only other Dragon Quest game I've played is actually Dragon Warrior, which is the original Dragon Quest game. This is the North American version. Now a lot of people got this game if they were subscribers to Nintendo Power way back in the day. I was not a subscriber to Nintendo Power, so what was kind of funny was back in elementary for me and my group of friends, we used to have kind of like a black market trading ring where we would trade everything from video games, G.I. Joes, Ninja Turtles, Legos, and essentially I don't remember exactly how I got a copy of RC Pro-Am, but I ended up trading that for Dragon Warrior. I had the complete in-box version with manual and everything, which I no longer have the box. I believe at some point I might have traded my Dragon Warrior stuff for, maybe it was the Mega Man 3 Nintendo Power, I can't remember, but this is actually my original copy of Dragon Warrior. Really enjoyed the game. This was my introduction to RPGs, and actually I've really wanted to play the Dragon Warrior Dragon Quest series since then. Of course, during the NES and SNES days, I was aware of the other Dragon Warrior games, 2, 3, and 4, but they were never at rental places, could never find them in shops. I used to see the listings for them at Funkoland, and they were actually considerably expensive back then even, so just never had the opportunity to play in the other games. Since then, I have picked up a few games in the series. I have 7 for PlayStation 1, 8 for PlayStation 2, and then I do have a couple of the games for DS, but I just hadn't made the time to get to them. And actually, a lot of you might already know, there's been about 16, 17 years from the early 2000s up until just recently that I pretty much swore off JRPGs, but now I'm getting back into them. I've really been thinking about getting to Dragon Quest VIII for quite some time. I hadn't. Then this was announced, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to jump into this one and stop saying I want to play the games in this series and just do it. And then, of course, there was a collector's edition, so I had to get it. So I will say I did have a slight little bit of disappointment when I opened up the box, and in the box that everything was shipped in was the collector's edition and the game separate. I always prefer when the game is in the box itself. I think the game being excluded from the box kind of just makes this an extra thing and not necessarily like a collector's edition. So let's go ahead and check this out then. So this is the Dragon Quest XI Echoes of an Elusive Age Edition of Lost Time. So the box is pretty simple. We have a emblem there on the front, we have the text on the side. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward, nothing wrong with that. Then let's go ahead and open this up and see what we get. A lot of times when I pre-order collector's edition, I kind of see what they come with and order it and forget about what it comes with. So it's always kind of a, oh yeah, that's right, sort of situation. So I will say the box is kind of neat. It's not just a standard box lid that lifts off. It kind of flips open. You know, I appreciate little things sometimes. And the first thing we have here is pretty sweet, and that is the hardcover Dragon Quest XI Companion Compendium. Now this is kind of an art book, information book, all in one. This contains character information, item information, monster information, and of course, like I said, comes in a nice hardcover book containing lots of artwork. So it's kind of a trade-off one way or the other. It actually kind of reminds me of the original release of Dragon Warrior, which did come with a strategy guide for the game. So that's kind of neat. Kind of takes me back a little bit. Then the next item here is the Dragon Quest XI Symphonic Suite. And this is a collection of selected tracks from the Dragon Quest XI soundtrack. I'm assuming this is not a complete soundtrack. At least I don't believe it is. It only has 19 tracks on 2 discs, but I absolutely love it when soundtracks come with collector's editions. I think every single collector's edition should contain a soundtrack, and if I end up absolutely loving this game, which I really hope I do, I won't have to track down the soundtrack. So the next item here then is the cloth map that this comes with. This is a map of Erdrea. And I've talked about cloth maps before. They've come with some of the other collector's editions I've gotten. And I always think they're pretty neat. More for aesthetic and artwork rather than functionality, which is kind of an interesting trade-off when it comes to collector's editions. But I'm kind of guessing there might be some maps in the Compendium. But I always find cloth maps to be unique inclusions, so that's pretty cool. And then the last item here, I kind of forgot about that it came with this collector's edition and kind of explains why the game was not in the box itself, but that is the Steelbook. Now I know some people aren't fans of Steelbooks. I do really like Steelbooks. I think most collector's editions should include Steelbooks, along with soundtracks and art books as well. I know they don't sit on the shelf as nicely because they're not uniform with the rest of standard clamshell cases. But for me, I tend to keep the stuff in collector's editions, and I usually just find them visually appealing because they usually have different artwork, and that's always neat. Pretty simple case. A lot of times Steelbooks are pretty simple, and we have some additional art on the inside. So that is the Dragon Quest XI edition of Lost Time. Of course, I would love to hear your thoughts about this collector's edition. Did anybody else pick this up? Anybody else plan on picking up Dragon Quest XI? What are your thoughts on the series? And are there any games I should avoid in the series? I always hear the goods. What about the bads? So let me know what you think. And then as always, thank you very much for watching, and I will talk to you next time on the Game Grinder.